Welcome to Registered, the podcast of the Catholic Register, where we'll be taking a look at the stories that graced all of our platforms over the past week. I'm Mickey Conlon, editor of the Register, alongside reporters Luke Mandato and Quinton Amundson. This week's episode is brought to you by Chalice. Give Christmas gifts that are Catholic, Canadian, and life-changing for a child living in poverty. The Chalice gift catalog is full of fun and meaningful options, and every dollar goes to the children, guaranteed. Find your perfect gifts at chalice.ca. Well, welcome, guys. Another week of Registered as we hum along. And I know we were talking right there about gifts, the perfect gifts from chalice.ca. Thank you, Chalice, for your sponsorship and your gift to us. But perhaps the greatest gift that we talk about this week is the story, Luke, you did about, well, I'll let you take over here, about Tyler's home.
Absolutely, Mickey. If we want to talk about gifts of love, I don't think, like you said, we have a better story for gifts of love than what I was able to talk about for this paper that we're going to be discussing here. This is a story that kind of fell into our lap. I know Catholic Charities had reached out to you about this case they had heard about. And as you said, it was entitled Tyler's Family Homes. Essentially, we have a 78-year-old father, Gary Langen, who is renovating a farmhouse, his family farmhouse out in Erin, Ontario. But he's not just renovating it for personal use. He's renovating it so that it can become the permanent home of the next lifetime caregiver for his son, Tyler. So his son, Tyler, is 40 years old. He suffered with cerebral palsy and a stroke disorder all his life. Essentially, Gary, who's been his lifetime caregiver for all 40 years of his life, has made the rather difficult decision and acceptance the fact that Tyler is going to survive him. And having been his only caregiver his entire life, he's now in the process of looking into sort of these next steps at how Tyler is going to be looked after once he's gone. And as I said, having been his only caregiver his entire life, he figures the best possible option is to look for a new caregiver, a new permanent family caregiver for Tyler. Hence the renovations in this farmhouse, which is where whoever he finds and selects will live with Tyler for the rest of his days. I'm sure Quinton can appreciate certain stories like this where the scene is kind of already laid out for you. You know, it's kind of the perfect story where you don't even really have to dig too deep to capture the moment. It was just incredible to speak with this father and just to hear the love he expressed for his son, that he has expressed for his son for the past 40 years was incredible. They're ongoing in the search right now. If anyone takes a look at the article on thecatholicregister.org, you can find the link to read more about the specifics. But Mickey, when you first took a look at this, when it came across the editor's desk, what were some of your thoughts with this story?
Well, it's something that really doesn't get spoken about very much, and this is we're not talking about a unique situation. This is happening everywhere where challenged children have had one caregiver, and the caregiver they age. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Look at Gary Langen. He's 78. He's still doing a lot of the work himself, so he seems like he's in half decent shape for a 78-year-old man. But you know, he recognizes the inevitability that he is going to pass sometime. Who's going to look after his son? And it's out there. That is such a big issue, and we don't talk about it nearly enough.
Absolutely. And in the story, I spoke to Don Walker from Mary Center, which is one of the social service organizations working, in conjunction with Catholic Charities, who had heard about this story. And when I asked him if this is a model he's seen before, he said, well, maybe not to the extent of, a 78-year-old using his own hands to get the house ready to go for another family. But he says, absolutely. And especially in recent years, they've seen families where they've been primary caregivers for a son or daughter with different delays in whether it be physical or mental delays, that he said he's seen it before. It's out there, like you said, Mickey. He said he's had families say, we'll pay you if you can guarantee that we'll find someone that can look after this child once we're gone. And it's something that he says is a model that's increasing rather than the traditional sort of traditional care options for people. So again, it was a very emotional story. Speaking with Gary, you could tell it meant a lot to him, just to be able to sort of share his process with this. And like you said, what a thing to sort of come to terms with. But it seems like he's more determined than ever, like you said, even at 78, to be putting the work in now to make sure something's in place for Tyler. So yeah,
Yeah,
touching
and
story.
his personal story is it's a nice story in that, obviously he loves his son. He's been the caregiver, but he's had his issues himself. I know you say in the story he had a health scare a couple years back. And I guess this is what got him thinking about this. Because I guess, a little respite himself, headed down to Costa Rica. And it was probably the first time he was ever separated from Tyler. And it took about 4 days, and Tyler was in the hospital. So I guess it just shows it was a bit of a kickstart for him that's to get this going.
Absolutely. He said that, this is 15 years in the making. If it wasn't for that health scare, I think the first thing I asked him is why this model? Why not the traditional care model? And he said flat out to me, if we were to put Tyler in a traditional home, his health would deteriorate and he'd be gone within a month, he said. And he said that was not an exaggeration. So when he went to Costa Rica, he said within a week, his son's health rapidly declined and he was already in hospital. So that just goes to show the level of care that he needs and the level of care that his dad's been able to provide for him for 40 years. Quinton, any thoughts on the piece?
Yeah, I'll just jump in here. I'll just say that this is the type of story that, it's very important that you support the Catholic Register, because you just don't really get these accounts of self-sacrificial love and the beauty that comes with putting others before yourself, and many other publications. It's such a rarity, but here with the Register, this is what we do. And this was a very, wonderful account, Luke. And I was thinking of the movie Marvin's Room, which tells the story of this very devoted daughter who, took care of her bedridden father for over 40 years. And the one person's like, well, how could you have just given your life up like this? Like, didn't you miss so much? Like, weren't you denying yourself all these things? But she said, the character played by the late Diane Keaton said, well, I could have not imagined a better way to spend my life. It is such a gift to give love and be transformed. And I believe that Gary has given himself the greatest gift. He's been transformed into a beautiful vessel of fatherhood, the way that God has outlined in the Bible that it should be. And it's too rarely it is the case. So we need to have a lot of fathers and caregivers and young men and women too, to look at Gary's story, internalize it, and try and be a little bit more like him.
Absolutely. And I'll just add quickly, Quentin, I think you hit the nail on the head there. One of the first things Gary said to me when I spoke with him was he doesn't want this to come across at all that, the past 40 years or this new project he's working on has ever been a burden, that Tyler has ever been a burden in his life. He said it's been a fantastic learning experience growing in love. And he just loves his son so much. So it never really came across to me that this was something he was pained to do. It really is a story about love and love that spans decades. So yeah, well said.
It's a very Catholic and a very Christian thing to do, which, not to say that Christians and Catholics this is something only we do, but it is definitely one of the things that our church teaches us. And if we're going to talk about our Christianity and our heritage, we've got some more news on that front. In the province of Ontario is, I guess not, I can't say refusing to recognize December as Christian Heritage Month, as so many of the municipalities have done. But I know, Quinton, you had some conversations with people weren't very happy with the government of Doug Ford for basically ignoring them and trying to get designated Christian Heritage Month December. We've got Hindu month, Sikh heritage, Islam heritage month. Why not Christian?
Yeah, that's the question. And I think it's downright mystifying to Molly Banerjee, who really leads the Christian Music Festival in Toronto, and also this initiative. And of course, the Christian Musical Festival didn't even happen this year because of public safety concerns. I mean, there were really big concerns during the summer about Christians congregating, and apparently there's a lack of urgency with trying to give Christians their due. And if you really want to look at it through the prism of inclusivity with all these other groups that have been feeded, all these other groups, there are members of those ethnicities that declare Christianity as their religion. So if you really want to look at it from an inclusive standpoint, I mean, there's not a religion more inclusive than Christianity. So, it has that going for it, not only the cultural legacy, but there's just so many cases why Ontario should have joined. I mean, Toronto, Ottawa, a lot of the major heavy hitters from municipalities have signed up. So it just seemed like it was very confusing. And I mean, there were conversations that Molly Banerjee tried to have with Doug Ford. It was passed off to the multiculturalism office. A couple of emails were back and forth, but not since August 12th. So we're looking at 115 days ago that they've given any sort of response here. So I mean, it's really quite sad that they're not wanting to recognize Christianity in the month of December. I tried to get answers from the multiculturalism office that oversees this, reached out to 7 staffers, 0 for 7. None of them got back to me. So make of that what you will.
Yeah, it's crazy, Quinton. And I had spoken with Molly and Jay, her husband Jay, in a past story of maybe a year ago about that Christian Music Festival. And these are people that are extremely passionate. I'm sure you got the same feeling speaking with them. This is something that they really have been looking at year round and have been for some time. So it is a little extra disappointing to see that there hasn't been much movement on it when you take a look back and you see how much they've worked on this and how much effort they've put into it. And I'm sure it grinds Mickey's gears as well to hear 0 for 7 on looking for some clarification on that. But maybe that's typical.
Well, I guess Christians, we are the majority here, so you get overlooked. It's just, well, hey, we got it pretty good, you know. But and it may sound like we're whining a bit, but this has been a theme we've been dealing with the Register for a few years now, and it's not Christian persecution, but that is a theme. Like Quinton, you've done so many Nigeria stories. We've just around the world, and this is how it ends up starting. It's like, you guys are, don't worry about you guys. You'll do all right and everything. And it's like, no, perhaps we should recognize Christian. It's all it is just say, hey, okay, sure, thank you very much. Christian Heritage Month. It's pretty easy.
It's a simple proclamation that needs to be signed. I mean, they are not asking for the world here. They're not asking for parades down, Bay Street. I mean, that would be reserved.
Well, we're saving that for the
Leafs.
The Bay Street. We're saving that for the Leafs.
That's what, yeah, exactly. I guess we have to, and we're going to be waiting for a while based on their start
willing,
to this year.
God willing.
Another story. That's another story. But I mean, it's just, I think that people, they came from India, Molly and Jay, where, I mean, it's a very different, system. It's not a very friendly country for Christianity. So they expected to come here and being able to really be loud and proud about their faith in the public square. And they were just very surprised that it's like, well, you don't really need to, to show your faith that way. But I think that when countries really lean in and celebrate the distinct identities, which have been very foundational into turning Canada into what it is for so many years, that only bodes well. It's the countries that have the strongest sense of who they are that ultimately survive and thrive in the long term. if you have a lot of confusion and you're not really able to have that really distinct, that's Canadiana, you could lead yourself into some very troubling times ahead. So we'll see where this goes.
Yes. And speaking of Christians who know who they are, Quinton, again this week, one of the stories you did, we posted online, was your conversation with the Knights of the Holy Sepulchre. How about you give us an idea what happened there?
They have had a very successful Christmas Gala. I think at the very beginning, they were hoping to get, kind of close to $100,000, but they went well beyond that. They got $100,000 alone for a wonderful initiative to rebuild a lot of schools and really ensure that the staffing of Hebrew Catholic schools are strong in the Holy Land, because they view education and the dialogue and the connections that can be made between different religions in that context as the key to forging a peace in an area obviously ravaged by war. There have been tons of stories written about Gaza and Israel. And if we want to have a more promising chapter, they see the promising things that happen in the school, where you have Muslim and Christian and other denominations playing soccer together, having lunch together. That's the way that you really are able to see, well, you know what? There's a lot of similarities. There's a lot of areas where we could have accord here. And this was Cardinal Pizzabella, from the Latin Patriarch in Jerusalem, that's really championing this initiative. And Dr. Colin Salvana of the Toronto Canada Lieutenancy, which is, of course, led by Cardinal Leo as their Grand Prior. And there was a special guest from the Vicar Governor General of North America, Thomas Pogge. They all spoke to me on Saturday, and they all believe very strongly in this conviction that education is the pathway to peace. And they want to make sure that Christian and Catholic education is as strong as possible in the Holy Land. And I applaud them for it. And they're going to try and raise $1 million for a Crowdwest fundraising campaign. And they've already raised north of $225,000. And the campaign just started 2 days ago. So they're off to a good start.
Good, yes. Well, I don't know how much simpler you can get. Is just go out and meet the people from, you got either side. Like, just look at a sports team. You've got, and especially a kids sports team in the city of Toronto, probably one of the most multicultural cities in the world. And you've got a Sri Lankan kid, an Irish kid, an Italian kid. You've got a Nigerian kid. Throw them together on a youth soccer team, and the kid doesn't look at this guy's difference or anything. They look, hey, this is my buddy who's on my team, who's trying to help me be better, and why not? Why not? That's just the way it is. You get to know. It's a very Jesuit thing. Get to know the other. So, okay. Speaking of the other, the Irish others. How about those Irish others? You tell me, Luke, about these wonderful, wonderful Irish people that Mark McGowan has written about, or I guess he's the editor of this new book.
Sure thing, Mickey. Yes, this seems like a story that's right up your alley.
It's right up me and my people's alley for sure.
There you go. There you go. Essentially, there was an event that took place at the University of St. Michael's College this week. 50 Irish Lives in Canada. This is a new book project that Dr. Mark McGowan, is professor of theology there at St. Michael's University College, had sort of overseen, along with Eamon McKee, Dr. Eamon McKee.
Eamon. Oh, geez, you can't let these Italian guys play with these Irish names.
Maybe you should wrap up the story, Mickey. It might be better.
Oh, you know the story. You know it.
Yeah. He was the former ambassador of Ireland to Canada, and essentially these two collaborated. They thought, what better to do, to underscore the importance of Irish Canadian impact and Irish Canadian lives than this new book, 50 Lives in Canada. It essentially takes a look at 50 different stories of Irish-born Canadians from 1661 to 2017. And the only two prerequisites is you had to be born in Ireland and you had to be deceased. And other than that, any sort of contribution, any sort of impact on Canadian society as a whole got you, a chance to be detailed in the book. So Mickey, you just missed the cut. It
Just
seems
missed.
like.
I'm looking to get into maybe the fourth edition of this book. Maybe I can get in if I'm lucky.
Yes, it was a great chat. He's obviously Mark McGowan, someone that knows his stuff very well. We had a great sort of chat talking about how do you even go about narrowing down, over 3 centuries worth of stories into this book. And he said that's exactly what the challenge was. So over the last 3.5 years, they got together with, I think, about 18 different specialist historians and writers. They took on the task of selecting, exploring, and honoring those distinct lives. There's a lot of course, Catholic angles and Catholic stories in there. You can't really separate, the Irish from the Catholic. There's also some Protestant stories in there, but we don't have to get too much into those, Mickey. I don't think so. But there's a lot of different ones that were covered. A lot of different characters, whether it's tavern owners in Kingston or Timothy Eaton himself, Thomas Darcy McGee. It just is runs the gamut of different stories of Irish people that came to Canada and changed the scene here. So,
and of course, Archbishop Lynch, who was the former Archbishop of Toronto. And I know there was a couple other examples out of St. John's and out of Halifax, I believe. The Archbishop Connolly in Halifax, and
all sorts of different sisters and priests and nuns and brothers who have built, schools and hospitals and different parishes all across Canada. So they're all highlighted in the book. Again, it's the best of the 50 Irish lives. And I think, even joking, Mickey, this seems like something that could have a volume 2, a volume 3, a volume 4, and so on.
Oh, easily. And you know what? They could go do an Italian version. They could do a Portuguese version. You could do a Chinese version. There is just so many people have come to this country from elsewhere and made it a better place. And it's a wonderful thing that, of course, Mark McGowan, obviously got the Irish roots himself, and he's probably the preeminent Irish Catholic historian in Canada. So it's a nice book. Hey, maybe there's I'm looking for a Christmas gift. Any of you guys thinking?
Well, he said this is the #1 Christmas bestseller for the Irish grandparent in your life, the Irish parent in your life. So it's published by renowned Catholic publisher Novalis. I'm sure any of our listeners here are familiar with Novalis's work. It's on their website right now, so anyone interested can feel free and take a look. It really does seem like a very detailed and a very important book. So,
yeah, good. All right. Well, thanks very much, guys. I think that's going to bring this episode of Registered to a close. We'd like to thank you, our listeners, for joining us. Thanks to Quinton and Luke again. And we hope you can join us next time for Registered. Meanwhile, for all your Catholic news, be sure to stay informed at catholicregister.org.